Hi, good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Doing good? All right, great. We're so excited and thrilled that you're here with us in person, but also joining us online from all over the world. My name is Jamie Wen-Besson, and I'm a Senior Gender Program Manager at the International Union for Conservation of Nature, where I also serve as Chief of Party for Advancing Gender in the Environment, or as we like to call it, AGENT. Collaboration between IUCN and USAID, the United States Agency for International Development. We do have a full agenda for you today, so I just want to run through a quick few things before we get started to welcome you all into this event. So first of all, for all of you that are joining us online, this is a live streamed event, and we do have simultaneous interpretation available for you in Spanish and in French. And this session is being recorded, so we will process that and share that in the 3 languages as fast with all of you as we can. And secondly, for those of you that are here in person, you'll find on your seats a fact sheet about our event today, some of the information about the RISE Grants Challenge and as well as about our winners. And we also have an agenda that's on your seats. We really do hope that you find this event informative and enriching, and we hope that the event will help each and every one of us better understand why and how a more holistic approach to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment that addresses the barriers that are posed by gender-based violence across diverse environmental contexts is crucial. And finally, I do want to remind and bring up that this event will discuss gender-based violence, which can be difficult, it can be triggering, and it can be upsetting. And for that reason, we want you to prioritize your self-care. And for those of us that are here in person, we do have a lovely space out here in the atrium. We've set up little spots so that you can view the water, and we have some tissues, and there's also food and water outside. If you need to take a break and rejoin us, there is absolutely no judgment. We welcome you to do so and to please take care of yourselves. And on this note, it's my immense pleasure to introduce to you 2 very special people. The first is Dr. Anita Zek. She's my dear colleague, an Indigenous Maya Yucatec leader from Belize, and she is the fiercest defender of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous women and girls' rights. And I am deeply, deeply privileged to also consider her a sister. Before today's event, she held a Mayan offering for our grant winners and to help us center ourselves and prepare ourselves to also share some important but difficult stories. So for this reason, I'd love to invite Anita to share very briefly with all of us about the moment that we had and what these candles and flowers you see here represent. Anita?
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone. For those of you who have already been here and were part of the offering, thank you. And for the ones online, just to share with you that today is a very special day for our team, for USAID, for the grantees who are here, and for all the rest of brothers and sisters who are here present and who work on GBV. In our Mayan cosmology, cosmovision, sorry, you start a new process of our lives by offering, by giving thanks for what we have received from Mother Earth, but also asking for light, for guidance, for protection. Today in the Mayan calendar, it is Nawal Si, which means guardian. Si means dog in Maya. The guardians of the natural and spiritual law. And so today we had an offering to start this new process in partnership, joined together, in balancing, in seeking the truth and justice in the work that we do. So thank you for being here. We also gave a very small but significant gift to the grantees that they will take back home and offer when they reach back home. We cannot burn candles in this building. So we gave them a gift to take back and offer in nature. And the same for USAID, we presented them with a yellow candle that is knowledge, that's partnership, that's building together. Because every single partner in this process is important. We cannot do the transformations that we want to get if we don't do it jointly, if we don't build together, empower together, and work together. So that's what I've petitioned to Mother Earth today, to protect us, to guide us, and give us that energy of building towards justice, towards light, towards GBV transformations we want to see for a better world. In the Mayan, this is the Mayan, the different colors that we have that represent our body, that represent day and night, that represent Mother Earth, that represent the water. And so we use these when we're making an offering. So thank you very much. I hope we continue with a good day of giving, being open to receiving, and to most importantly, building together. And especially thank you to the men also who are here, because for us in our community, gender is about complementarity. We cannot build only among women. We have to build with all the other genders that exist in our universe. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Anita. And your intention and your spirit definitely paved a really strong foundation for us. So thank you again. But we also have not forgotten you, our audience here in person and also joining us online. We also wanted to hold space for you and to help us center ourselves and prepare ourselves in the spirit of humility, learning, and openness to hear what our grant winners have to share with us today and to support what can be a very difficult conversation at times. To this end, it's my immense pleasure to ask Napua Lokelani Kamakele to help us start by focusing our energies and carry out our kuleana, or responsibility, together. Napua is a locally based Indigenous Hawaiian Kanaka Maoli, who I also consider a sister. So thank you so much for agreeing to support us. And I'm now going to ask you to come join us and help us seek knowledge and clear negativity.
Ano ai kako me ke aloha. O nā pua lokelani ko uinoa mai ka mokupuni o ahu ma ka ahu poa o Nanakuli. Nunui ka haahaa no ku'u mau halo ma'anei ke ala me ko oko. My name is Napua Lokelani, like Jamie said. I am from the island of Oahu, from the ahu poa of Nanakuli. And I am deeply humbled to be here and grateful to be here with everyone here. So what I'm going to offer you today is 2 oli, or Hawaiian chants. The first one is an oli that we do to sort of clear our minds and open up our heads to receive ike, or knowledge. And we usually do it in spaces of learning. We do it before we dance hula. And the second oli will be oli lei. So as Hawaiians, we often offer oli as ho'okupu, or makana, or offerings. And it is a lei of aloha, of healing, and of mana.
Thank you so much, Napua. Oh, let me give you your. Mahalo, Napua, for transmitting your ancestral wisdom through us, through Oli. Now, like many people, I am too a survivor of gender-based violence, and I have been since the age of 8 years old. So I know how difficult this can be. And for this reason, I just again want to express my most profound and deepest gratitude for Anita and for Napua, who are strong, powerful Indigenous women in my life, who are leaders that bring their cosmovision and their aloha to all around them and to support us today, our presenters, our audience, and I hope that you find their interventions grounding as well. So now that we have established a collective foundation of openness and receptiveness, I am so pleased to introduce a series of very special opening remarks from global leaders. First, it is such a privilege for me to introduce Rachel Vogelstein to you. She serves the United States as the Special Assistant to the President on the White House Gender Policy Council, and she acts as a National Security Council Special Advisor on Gender. Rachel addresses economic security, democracy and political participation, health and education, and humanitarian relief, among many other issues. She is also a very special speaker for us today as someone who has written a book that has been recognized by the New York Times as having captured the global impact of the groundbreaking Me Too movement. That book is called Awakening, Me Too, and the Global Fight for Women's Rights. She has dedicated a rich life of service to gender equality, women's empowerment across government, civil society, academia, and also thought leadership roles. Please join me in welcoming Rachel.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And on behalf of the United States government and the White House, I want to welcome all of you here today, especially the newest winners of our Resilient, Inclusive, and Sustainable Environments Grants Challenge, who traveled from around the world to be with us here in Washington, D.C. Welcome as well to the many people who are joining us online. And I also want to extend my gratitude to my colleagues at USAID and to the International Union for Conservation of Nature for hosting this important event. The United States believes that preventing and responding to gender-based violence around the world is a matter of human rights, justice, and equality. President Biden has championed this cause throughout his time in public life. And under the Biden-Harris administration, he has called on the United States government to help end the scourge of gender-based violence as a moral imperative. Ending this epidemic is also a strategic imperative. According to the World Bank, violence against women in some countries costs up to 3.7% of annual gross domestic product. Preventing and addressing gender-based violence is not just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. Yet new and intensifying challenges make this important task even more difficult, from the rise of movements undermining democracy and gender equality, to the increase in conflict in many parts of the world, to the growing effects of climate change. The combination of these impacts, coupled with the burgeoning environmental crisis, threatens to undermine many of the hard-fought gains that we've made. The relationship between climate change and gender-based violence is well known to the experts and advocates in this audience. And the connection between these issues is what brings us together today, to recognize and elevate the important work being done to address the nexus between rising climate threats and the incidence of gender-based violence. We know that climate change presents unique threats to women, girls, and other underserved populations. In many contexts, women and girls are disproportionately harmed by food insecurity, water scarcity, and extreme weather and disasters, and women are less likely to have pre-disaster emergency savings as compared to men. Left unchecked, climate change will further entrench global patterns of inequality, as resource competition and forced migration due to climate change are linked to increased rates of gender-based violence. For example, water scarcity exacerbated by climate change increases the likelihood of women and girls traveling to further and unfamiliar destinations to collect water for their families, which heightens their risk of experiencing gender-based violence. Women environmental defenders are also at high risk of gender-based violence, including online harassment and abuse, which can silence women and drive them away from leadership and public life. Without the free and full participation of these women, climate solutions are less likely to be sustainable and effective. There is still too little recognition of the link between climate change and gender-based violence. But I am proud to say that the RISE challenge we are highlighting today and the innovative work led by RISE grantees around the world helping to meet this moment. The United States is a leader in addressing gender equality through foreign policy and development efforts, including through our commitment to tackle the relationship between gender-based violence and climate change in our policy, programming, and research. Our first ever national strategy on gender equity and equality emphasizes the promotion of gender equality in our efforts to mitigate and respond to climate change. And one of the objectives of our US strategy to prevent and respond to gender-based violence globally is to anticipate and address the increased risk of gender-based violence in climate crises. The US strategy on global women's economic security also recognizes that gender-based violence and climate change are fundamental threats to realizing women's economic security. And as a party to the UNFCCC Lima Work Program on Gender, the United States has committed to advancing gender-responsive climate action. These strategies and the policy, programming, and research efforts outlined within them are critical to our work to prevent and respond to gender-based violence in the context of climate change. The RISE challenge and the work of its grantees to address gender-based violence in environmental efforts exemplifies our commitment to meet this moment. Yet there is still much to be done. If we as a global community are to realize a world free of gender-based violence, a world in which climate stressors do not disproportionately affect women, a world in which women are elevated as leaders in the fight to mitigate and respond to climate change, then it is critical that we come together to prioritize funding, political support, and attention to both gender-based violence and gender inequality in the climate crisis. I am heartened that our newest RISE Grant Challenge winners are leading the way, and I thank all of you for your leadership and your partnership on the road ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for reminding us of the moral imperative to end gender-based violence and some of the steps the United States government has been taking to demonstrate global leadership and also hopefully to inspire the rest of the globe as well. And so carrying that very thread through for us, it's my pleasure to also introduce you all to Maite Gonzalez, the head of the Human Rights and Conservation team at IUCN. Maite has worked tirelessly to make visible the poverty, environment, and climate nexus, emphasizing the importance of good governance, rights, and sustainable consumption for effective biodiversity and climate results. With aspirations of solidarity, justice, and a healthy environment for all, Maite, I welcome you up to join and share some remarks for us as well.
Thank you, Jamie. Good morning, everyone, estimated guests, speakers. Let me express my deepest gratitude for each of you for being here and support this event. Here, we and our partners have many important things to share with you. So I wish to extend warmest greetings from the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, and particularly from our Human Rights in Conservation team. On this beautiful day and this beautiful space, we are grateful that so many representatives from all around the globe have come here to speak with you, to speak with us. For many of them, this is their very first time in this very great country in the United States, and they come to us with a message of passion and a deep, heartfelt concern that our efforts to conserve the environment and battle climate change do not seriously address the safety of women and girls, in particular from the way gender-based violence is used to affect and stop their rights to access, manage, or use their environmental resources. Special thanks to the leaders who speak on this issue. For Rachel Bogelstein, it's a pleasure for us, an honor for you to be here and listen to your words from the White House. To Calliope Minjeru of UN Women, who is connected online. Thanks for being with us. And to Jamila BGO of the USAID. And a warm note of thanks, special, very special, to Corinne Hart and her team of USAID for seeing us as a partner of choice and believing in IUCN to work along with you, driving this force for effective, equitable, and sustainable environmental solutions. But I have to give a special thanks to the agent and rights team, to Jamie, Ruani, Laura, and Dora for making all this possible. They have worked intensively to have this special event come into a reality. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Over recent decades, the call to the globe to advance gender-responsive environmental action has been taken up. Yet for far too long, the most pervasive forms of discriminatory and abusive gender norms, including gender-based violence, have been ignored or unaddressed. As a global community, addressing gender-based violence and its linkages with the environment was difficult, but necessary to ensure comprehensive approaches to gender-responsive environmental action to help advance and secure human rights alongside our environmental goals. It's not anymore just about environment, but it's about human rights. For this reason, we are deeply grateful for the support and encouragement of our partners at the United States Agency for International Development to not only help us dig deep to understand what is going on, but to understand what we can do together and how we can battle to support us in our search for change. The RISE Grants Challenge is an opportunity for us to take the next steps together, to not only take action, but also to help peel back the barriers of challenges to show the world how collaborative and inclusive solution finding can help lead the way. Today, I am pleased that the 5 winning projects have committed to addressing gender-based violence in environment programs through the RISE Challenge grants. We cannot achieve any of these environmental goals without the commitment of donors to support programs like the RISE Grants mechanism and organizations that commit to working with the communities, including women and girls. And we cannot succeed if we do not prioritize and address their safety and dignity when gender-based violence threatens their roles and relationships with nature and the environment. IUCN is committed to mainstream and advance a people-centered and rights-based approach in conservation globally. With our constituency, which is actually very, very powerful, thousands of members, thousands of experts in specialized commissions, we see the union as the partner of choice to achieve good conservation through good governance. Women's rights are human rights. So with the spirit of the Nahuatl and the spirit of Oli and Aloha, I want to thank you again, all of you, for being here and learn more about the new winners and their projects. Thank you for being here. And just a final word. I used to work for years in Latin America with projects funded by USAID. And if I see in the past things happen in the field that you could not understand deeply. And for example, it was difficult to understand why we were working with a fishing community, and we had all the women participating, even the girls participating. And when the moment comes to use the goods that were provided by the project, you didn't see the women around. And in that moment, we were not able to understand that was a kind of violence. They were being used to access the goods of the project, but they were not participating in the benefits. And in that moment, we saw that as the norm. it was not. And they were so afraid of telling us what was happening. And we were not sufficiently smart to understand. So that's why I'm so happy that we are able finally to open the veil, to see what is happening, and to feel with the people what they are feeling, what they are suffering, and provide a word of help. So thank you for the grantees for doing this, for letting us be part of your journey. And I hope that with these projects, we will show to the world that gender-based violence is actually an obstacle for rights, for sustainable development, and for a just world for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maite, and for reflecting on our collective search for change and for sharing that story. It's a very powerful story. Thank you. And finally, in terms of our lineup for opening remarks, it's my pleasure to introduce to all of you Calliope Minjiru. Calliope is the Chief of Ending Violence Against Women section at UN Women. She has worked as a lawyer in Greece, and at international levels, she has worked for UN agencies as well as INGOs on human rights, women's human rights, and refugee protection in development and humanitarian sectors. Though she could not join us here today in person, she will share some remarks with us live from New York. Calliope, thank you so much for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, distinguished guests and colleagues. We at UN Women were particularly honored that you have included us in this important event, and apologies that I haven't been able to join you in person for a really inspiring event. It's my honor and pleasure to join you online to celebrate the organizations, the women's rights activists and teams that receive the Rice Grant Awards to address the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation and violence against women and girls. We heard already, and we know more and more, that violence against women and girls and climate change are unfortunately two of the most pressing global emergencies and sustainable development challenges of our time. Climate change does not only threaten our planet's sustainability. We know already that at times of crisis, as we already heard, violence against women increases, and so is the case for climate change. However, in this case, we have to face multiple facets of violence against women. For example, regarding women environmental human rights defenders, they are particular risk and threats as they take actions to protect their territories, their ecosystems and communities from the impacts of human-led habitat loss, degradation and climate change. And equally, failure to eliminate violence against women and girls more broadly in communities, it poses a very serious risk to mitigation, adaptation, and resilience building efforts to combat the climate crisis, as women who face violence cannot really participate effectively in all these processes. And we heard already that while there has been increased international attention in understanding and addressing the gender-climate nexus and issues in policies and programs, the intersections, the nexus between climate change and violence against women and girls have received much less focus. Of course, we are among experts that they understand these linkages, but we still have a lot to do in order for the global community to better understand the linkages. It's indeed reassuring that in the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women last year, the international community reached a consensus on the need for complementary actions to address violence against women and girls in the context of climate change. And it did provide a very good roadmap on how to do that. Regarding UN Women's role, we take a comprehensive approach in the prevention of and response to violence against women and girls across its spectrum in different settings. We work with different partners, governments, development partners, civil society organizations, and particularly women's rights organizations, feminist movements, and the private sector to create an enabling policy environment for the elimination of violence against women and girls in the context of climate change, promote cross-sectoral partnerships between violence against women and climate change actors, which is very important and doesn't always exist in the countries where we function, generate more data and evidence on the interlinkages, and mitigate risks of violence while providing essential services to survivors and protect women environmental human rights defenders. All this work also is facilitated through unique advocacy platforms, such as the Generation Equality Action Coalitions, and particularly the Action Coalition on Gender-Based Violence and the Action Coalition on Feminist Action for Climate Justice Action, in which some of the partners today, such as UN Women, IUCN, and USAID, are both leaders and commitment makers. And we jointly seek to catalyze collective actions for transformational change for women and girls' lives around the world. It is especially an honor to celebrate today's winners, because the Rise Ground Challenge was submitted as a joint commitment between USAID and IUCN to the Generation Equality Forum. We recognize that Rise Grants are an important funding mechanism to advance and deliver on these international commitments. Investing in women's rights and civil society organizations is instrumental to preventing and responding to violence against women and girls in climate-related disasters. This needs to be a critical part of climate environmental policies, especially national adaptation plans and national adaptation programs of action. UN Women looks forward to working closely with IUCN and USAID to tackle violence against women and girls in the context of climate change and environmental degradation. Concluding, I would like to congratulate all the winners of the Rise Grants Challenge. The work that we are doing is critical, inspirational, and courageous. We look forward to learning from you and working with you to assure that women's and girls' safety be better integrated into all efforts in climate actions. Thank you very much.
We are so grateful for Calliope's remarks, reminding us that the Rise Grants Challenge contributes to important global work. Esteemed speakers, thank you. Your words provide immense context for us today. Now, all of our opening speakers talked about the fact that gender-based violence is used as a way to reinforce norms about who can access, manage, use, or control natural resources, and that these dynamics worsen in the context of climate change and environmental degradation. This knowledge and the resulting Rise Grants Challenge originated from a 2020 IUCN study published under Agent. Gender-based violence and environment linkages, the violence of inequality, was the first global study dedicated to uncovering and understanding and also documenting this information. To really understand why the Rise Grants Challenge is so important, we do need to go back to that moment, the moment that captures everything that came before, where we did not have global recognition of these issues. We were in a place where in the environment and climate sectors, we did not understand, never mind address, the ways in which gender-based violence affects environmental action and engagement. We know this because of the many stories that we'd heard collectively over the years from stakeholders, whispering words of concern whenever an issue arose. In our research, unfortunately, we confronted similar findings in every part of the world, across every environmental context. We also put out a global survey to environment practitioners, and we did hear from over 300 of them. 59% reported that they had observed gender-based violence during environmental programming, and 71% reported that there was insufficient information, tools, and capacities to address them. Today, for the first time, I'm actually going to share with you some deeper insights about that information. We conducted a recent demographic analysis of our research, and we find that gender-based violence and environment linkages were identified by both women and men environment practitioners. For example, psychological violence against women was identified by 76% of female respondents and 70% of male respondents. Physical violence against women was identified by 58% of women and 70% of men. Sexual violence against women was identified by 43% of women and 64% of men. It's also worth noting that sexual violence against girls was identified by 48% of men and 31% of women. This data is important because it tells us about the scale of the issue and that we must challenge its previous permissibility by filling the gap that the 71% told us about. We have to do this because we can't accept that the challenge is too daunting. Whenever we find this challenging, I do hope that we do remember the victims and the survivors and continually strive for the best that we can. As the globe warms, we see increases also in child marriage, which is used to gain short-term financial support through bride wealth. Organizations like UNICEF, they project that as climate change continues to worsen, the number of girl brides globally is going to double by 2050. In some countries, these doubling rates have already occurred in the span of 1 year, as it did in Ethiopia due to droughts in 2022. As we extract from the earth, we don't necessarily consider the impacts that these have on things like sex trafficking. For example, in Peru, one study in the Madre de Dios region that is deeply affected by illegal and legal and also artisanal mining activities, in 1 year, there was an estimated 4,500 females, about 78% of them minors, that were illegally trafficked and exploited to work in bars, restaurants, and brothels near these mining camps. When we address land rights, we don't necessarily consider the plight of women. In another example in southeastern Zimbabwe, an ethanol company arrived promising community development, employment, in exchange for land to grow sugarcane for biofuel. But dreams became nightmares there. Many people felt pressured to hand over their land for less than what was promised, and there were no compensation plots whatsoever given to women, forcing women to personally attempt negotiations. Affected people were exploited to exchange sex for land, with refusal resulting in a loss of land rights and/or eviction. In several studies, 8% of women and 5% of men surveyed reported experience or knowledge about sexual extortion from women in exchange for land rights. When we push for more women and girls' engagement in conservation roles because we need them and they deserve to be there, we also need to consider the enormous challenge of safety that they also face. Now, with this in mind, I'd like to ask Corinne Hart to walk us through how research translated into action. Corinne Hart is the Senior Gender Advisor and Team Lead for Energy, Environment, and Climate in the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment Hub at USAID. She leads a team of gender experts and provides technical leadership and assistance on gender equality and women's empowerment in a range of environmental sectors. She is also leading several agency initiatives, including Engendering Industries, the Global Development Alliance on Women's Empowerment with PepsiCo, and of course, Advancing Gender in the Environment. She's a dear colleague, a partner, and a believer. So please welcome Corinne.
Imagine that you're working for an organization helping to increase communities' access to clean water. And in your role, a young girl reports to you that she's been sexually assaulted while she's collecting that water. But you don't know what your organization's safeguarding policies are or what you're supposed to do with this information. Imagine you're conducting interviews with community groups to design a new activity that's going to introduce sustainable mining practices for a community. And during those conversations, the women tell you that when they are applying to mining jobs, their identification documents are confiscated and they're being trafficked into brothels. But you don't know how to address this in the design of your new activity. Or imagine you're working with women, engaging them in mangrove protection, and you learn that their engagement has been met with violence within their household. They're reporting to you that their husbands have beaten them for participating in your community meeting. But you don't know what to do, and you don't know what your responsibility is to keep them safe. These are the stories that came out in the research that Jamie mentioned, that we commissioned through USAID and IUCN's partnership called Agent. GBV is happening. All kinds of GBV is happening in every single environmental sector, in every region around the world. It is a huge problem, and yet hardly any funding is being put toward this issue. At USAID, once we saw these research findings, we knew we cannot look the other way, and we cannot leave our implementing partners out there trying to address these problems on their own. And we knew as USAID, we could make an impact through funding and thought leadership and our convening power to really help address these issues, which are getting worse as climate change is increasing resource scarcity and exacerbating this type of violence. So in 2019, we launched the RISE Challenge to address GBV in environment and climate related sectors. This is the only global mechanism that exists. It's the first of its kind that specifically provides direct funding to local organizations working in this nexus. We've invested $4 million in the past 2 rounds of RISE, which supported 9 projects in 6 countries around the world. But we know that this funding is nowhere close to meeting the need, because in those past 2 rounds, we received 430 applications from 66 countries around the world, and we were able to fund 9. We focus on funding local organizations, many of whom you will meet today, because we know that they are best placed to address the gender-based violence that's happening in their communities, in their local contexts, related to natural resource management in their communities. We also focus on developing partnerships. We think it is critical that environment experts and gender experts start working together to solve these issues. We were able to form in the past 2 rounds of RISE 6 innovative partnerships. And of our environmental organizations in the last 2 rounds, 6 of our environment groups had never before officially partnered with a gender organization. We have to be working together to address these issues, and we can't expect one organization to be a total expert in everything related to environment and gender-based violence. The RISE Challenge focuses on taking proven and promising practices to address GBV from other sectors, like health and education, where this work is more established, and bring it into environmental programming. We are testing these approaches. We're going to test more approaches with our winners, and we are committed to scaling what is working best to communities around the world. So far, our RISE grantees have worked in many different sectors, from helping women secure land rights, to empowering women miners to advocate for better treatment, to supporting safeguarding policies for conservation organizations and national parks, to supporting Indigenous women to develop safe spaces so they can share their experiences with GBV. And our past grantees have operated in incredibly challenging contexts. They were implementing all during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they are working in post-conflict countries and communities with large numbers of IDPs and returning migrants. Our past partners implemented activities in the DRC, Uganda, Fiji, Guatemala, Colombia, Vietnam, and Peru. And so far, RISE has reached 15,000 people directly with its work, and 93,000 people have been indirectly benefited from the work. So how are we doing this work? What is the core tenets of a RISE grant project? In addition to really forming these fundamental partnerships, we've seen really 3 other key components drive success for RISE implementation. The first is starting with awareness raising and capacity building. As we all know, GBV is an incredibly difficult topic to talk about publicly in many contexts. So before our grantees can start to prevent and respond to gender-based violence, they need to first start talking about it and encouraging people to acknowledge that it exists and understand how it is impacting your community. So they start there and they use awareness raising to discuss the types of violence that people are experiencing in the community. And they educate people, especially women, on their rights so that they are able to start to access support services for GBV survivors, and that community members are able to start understanding how to address harmful gender norms that underpin GBV. And our grantees from the past 2 rounds found, not surprisingly, that the more people started talking about it, our grantees started encountering more and more GBV survivors who urgently needed support. And so our grantees set up referral pathways that ensured that the survivors they encountered and met had access to local organizations to be able to access the survivor-centered support that they needed. Our RISE grantees have trained thousands of community members on how to address GBV. For example, in Uganda, one of our projects trained over 4,000 people at a RISE workshop on how to change gender norms and access safe, customary land titles. And our partners were able to then resolve land disputes for 100 people. The second component of the RISE grants are focused on engaging men. So welcome and thank you to all of the men that are here today. Men have to be engaged as key champions and stakeholders in this work. Women cannot do this alone, and empowering women on its own will not solve GBV. We know that men have to understand the issue and that changing harmful norms requires shifting mindsets of everyone in the community, not just women. After a RISE workshop in Uganda that taught men about GBV and their role in solving it, one male leader said, "We as men need to acknowledge this violence and see how to end this cycle." The third major component of RISE activities is focused on influencing policy and driving institutional reform to have a long-lasting impact. 14 of our grantees and partner organizations created or strengthened their GBV policies within their organizations. For example, the Kenya Wildlife Conservancy Association actually amended its constitution to address GBV and gender equality. And due to these types of institutional reforms, one of the local conservancies that KWCA works with found that more women were now running for leadership positions in the conservancy than they had ever seen before. The RISE challenge is changing people's lives. It's changing their minds about GBV, and it's increasing their understanding of how it intersects with natural resource management, which is a topic so few people are paying attention to. After their community workshops in Peru, Conservation International and PROMSEX found that 70% of women participants now agreed more strongly that women and men should have equal access to resources and opportunities. The RISE challenge is building women's skills and knowledge, not only so they can push back on GBV and seek support, but to more effectively implement sustainability practices. In Colombia, 92% of the women miners who participated in the RISE workshops said that their communication and advocacy skills increased. In Peru, over 70% of the women who participated in our RISE project said that they now feel safer engaging in conservation activities, and they know where to go to get support for GBV. In the DRC, the number of women who reported sexual coercion to be able to participate in their mining livelihoods reduced by half in the target community. And they reported better understanding of safe mining practices and the legal mining code so that they wouldn't be in violation when they were conducting their work. Due to the impact and success of the RISE activities, we are seeing our RISE grantees scaling this work beyond the USAID funded interventions. 16 Indigenous women who participated in UTSCHE's collective healing spaces in Guatemala went on to start their own spaces. In Peru, women from the RISE project formed an all-female community patrol, and they went to the government and said, "You need to train the all-male patrols how to legally and properly respond to GBV complaints from the community." Our partner Marstelde is bringing what they learned integrating GBV into the Red Plus mechanism in Fiji, to its work in Tanzania. And Conservation International in Peru has been able to secure funding from another donor to expand its work to address GBV in 5 new indigenous communities. The RISE Challenge is not only meant just to implement activities. We want to foster widespread awareness about this issue and the linkages that donors, development practitioners, and governments need to take immediate action on. We can't let this violence continue. And it's happening in the sectors and programs that we are working in, that we are responsible for. So I want to leave you with 2 quotes from our past grantees that I think really demonstrates the impact that this work is having on individuals' lives. The first is from a 65-year-old man who participated in Women for Women International's RISE training on gender norms and land rights in DRC. He said, "For me, this project is an important opportunity to minimize conflicts between girls and boys around land inheritance. I have 2 wives with whom I have 16 children. With this training, the idea that I should bequeath land also to my daughters is a decision I have taken. I will distribute my land fairly among my sons and daughters, and I'm committed to helping my daughters secure their land, and this will serve as a lesson for all the men in my community." And lastly, I want to leave you with a woman, an indigenous woman who participated in UTSCHE's training in Guatemala. She said, "After the trainings, my fear was gone and I went to defend myself. I have the right. I am a woman and I have rights. Just with this training, I woke up." This is the impact we're having. And so now I'm so honored to turn to the most exciting part of the agenda, which is to announce the winners of the latest round of the RISE Grants Challenge. So I'm going to ask Jamila and Rachel and Jamie to come up here with me while we welcome our winners. So starting with, should we scoot in a little so people can see? Starting with Latin America, we are pleased to announce that Espacio de Encuentro de las Culturas Originarias, or EECO, is partnering with the World Wildlife Fund Mexico under the RISE Grants Challenge to address the prevalence of gender-based violence across 2 tourism landscapes with 3 protected areas. Together, partners will engage local communities to integrate gender perspectives and GBV risks within regulatory instruments and promote the economic empowerment of women as a GBV prevention strategy. Please welcome Zinnia Carranza, the founder and general coordinator of EECO, and Claudia Duran Miranda, an officer with WWF Mexico. Congratulations.
And now introducing winners from Asia. Let's please welcome the Regional Community Forestry Training Center for Asia and the Pacific, or RCOFC. They are partnering with Gender and Development for Cambodia to address social norms and build awareness and capacities on gender-based violence and environmental linkages, including via male engagement as a prevention strategy to improve women's full, effective, and safe participation in Cambodia's community protected areas and forest management. So let's please offer a round of applause. Thank you for greeting Kalian Hu, the country director for RCOFC Cambodia, and Yi Huete, the senior program officer for social inclusion and gender equality from RCOFC Cambodia.
All right, staying in Asia, let's celebrate the consortium of winners that will be working in Thailand, the Philippines, and Indonesia. The Asia Indigenous Peoples Pact is partnering with the International Work Group for Indigenous Affairs and Perempuan Aman and the Network of Indigenous Women, BAI, to empower and elevate the indigenous voices of Indigenous women, environmental human rights defenders, to determine their priorities, voices, and strategies to end GBV as a barrier to their defense of the environment. Today, we're joined by Devi Angrani, and she's representing this consortium led by AIPP. She's the chairperson for the Association of Indigenous Women and of the archipelago in Indonesia. And let's welcome her and show her support.
And moving to Sub-Saharan Africa, let's please welcome the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association, KWCA, which is continuing its work through a second RISE grant in partnership with the Taita Tevata Wildlife Conservancies Association on preventing gender-based violence and promoting gender equality in conservancies. Let's please welcome Joyce Peshu, KWCA's Gender Program Officer.
And last but not least, let's bring to the stage Action Aid Zambia, who's partnering with the Young Women's Christian Association to address drivers of sex for fish exploitation by working with the local legal system and establishing and training women's watch committees to build women's collective action and agency to prevent GBV. Let's give a warm hello to Musonda Kabinga, the head of programs at Action Aid Zambia, and Samantha Munagandu, who will be leading the RISE project at Action Aid Zambia. These are the brave leaders and representatives that emerged from a competitive process from our last round of 375 applications. You have been selected to do this work. We have so much faith in you. We are so honored that you could be here with us in Washington, D.C. today. And we are so excited to see what you're going to do and the impact that you're going to have on your communities. Let's give them one last congratulations. All right, so now to help us get to know each RISE winner a little bit better, it is my pleasure to invite Jamila Biggio to the stage. Well, she's already standing here. And Jamila is our senior coordinator at USAID for Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment. She comes from a long career focused on addressing gender equality and national security, and has been an expert with an extensive diplomatic career spanning the White House National Security Council, the State Department, the Department of Defense, and the United Nations. But most importantly, she's our biggest cheerleader at USAID. She's a huge ally and support for all of the work that we're doing and has really enabled a lot of what we're able to do here today. So thank you, Jamila, welcome. And let me ask our RISE grantees to also sit at the panel.
Settled and everyone getting seated, we have a very short introductory video for you all, so I hope you enjoy.
Around the world, gender-based violence is a barrier to human rights and environmental sustainability. Our globe counts on each of us to sustainably manage nature, and in every part of the world, women and girls play key roles in nature conservation and climate change action. They are users, managers, and stewards of the land and its resources.
Leaders raising their voices for the protection and defense nature.
And environmental experts addressing the most pressing and concurrent crises of climate change, biodiversity loss, and energy.
Yet, for far too many, gender-based violence is used to reinforce who can engage,
who can benefit,
and who is left behind
when it comes to environmental and climate actions.
But there is hope,
because action is underway.
Through the Resilient, Inclusive, and Sustainable RISE Grants Challenge, funds and technical support are providing urgently needed assistance. Built on its research on gender-based violence and environment linkages, The RISE Grants Challenge is managed by the International Union for Conservation of Nature and is possible with thanks to the funding from the United States Agency for International Development. It is designed to support environmental organizations to build collaborations with those who have
experience with addressing gender-based violence,
To work with community members
and community-based organizations,
to co-develop strategies to prevent, mitigate, and respond,
To gender-based violence as it's related to environmental action.
To work with men and boys to change norms and prevent violence.
to mitigate vulnerability by building our economic empowerment.
to better respond to risks,
because we are all worthy of dignity and safety to have an equal place.
So my right to accept risk to defend nature as skills.
So that I can have a safe place in fisheries.
So I can have a safe place in conservation.
so I can have a safe place in coastal ecotourism.
so I can have a safe space in community protected area,
To contribute to environmental action.
Having the opportunity to see the incredible leaders that we have at the conversation. We'll have the opportunity now to hear from them about their inspiring work and the opportunities that they see ahead to help address the linkages and the relationship between gender-based violence and the environment, that we can support more women to help lead in conservation and environment efforts as we move on. So let me first turn to Davy Andre. Davy, you are from the Telu community, an Indigenous people group in Sumatra Island. You serve as the president of the Association of Indigenous Women of the Archipelago. Could you tell us why gender-based violence and environment issues are important to you, especially in relation to Indigenous women's environmental human rights defense?
Okay, thank you, Jamila. Thank you to have me here, because it's important to bring Indigenous women voices. I want opening with the stories. The young girls went to school, but she already promised to the mother they can harvesting the paddy. But when the back from the school, she just saw the mother hysterical, crying, because the paddy field is gone, because the land clearing for the oil palm plantation. What is important is the responsible still to be there. The roles of women to provide food for the family is cannot denied. And this is important for them. Like a little story, but so very deeply. It's a silent violence. Presence on the daily life of Indigenous women. We are voiceless. There is no data about that. We don't have a space to bring our perspective and interest about the Indigenous woman with the natural resources relation. We always share and serve the people, our forests, for the ecotourism, for the back to nature lifestyle, our spring for the better quality drinking water. But at the same time, we lose our life and dignity because you want more and more. It's not enough just for daily life. This is what we are facing as Indigenous women. This is a part of the what we say we are a victims, multiple layers of violence and discrimination. But we will not stop fighting for that. This is important for us to bring these issues from deeply. We are, as Indigenous women, taking care the Mother Earth, the natural, the nature. It's not just with our hands, with our knowledge, the traditional wisdom, with our spiritual, and deeply with our heart. We serve for the people. This is like a part of our body. That's why for us, this opportunity to bring our voices from the voiceless to be more voices with the data. There is no segregation data by ethnicity. In Indonesia, it's not easy to find that. We are still in shadowing. We are not present in the policy, in the number. As a human, we are not there. That's why it is important for us, the linkages between the environmental, natural resources with the women as a defender and fighter.
Thank you so much, Devi. And can you tell us more, the project that you will be leading is one with many partners. What do you hope to learn from each other?
Yes, because this is like, it's not a new for us. This network is already, it's already many years to be there. And we know our strength. Perempuan Aman, working with what we call engendering participatory mapping, we try to document it, the Indigenous woman perspective and interest on natural resources in the territory, because there is no data about that. We provide, and we using our members as a cadre to be using these data. There is 3,506 members. We are working with the 372 communities. And this is like a massive action. It's not just one by one, because the movement should be massive. It's a collective action. And we using the data is to produce the report. And the other one is we build our solidarity with the Indigenous women defenders and fighters. And we want to be in Asia to share the solidarity and build the work together. And the other one is important thing, the roles of IFGIA. They have a capacity to build our ability to produce report and follow the international mechanism as a part of bring our voices and issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So inspiring to hear about the work that the network is doing across the region. And as we look at the work in Asia, I'm thrilled now to turn to Kalyan Hu and Ii Hutway from the Regional Community Forestry Training Center for Asia and the Pacific in Cambodia. Yehun is the country director for the program, and Yi is a senior program officer for social inclusion and gender equality. So I will pass the mic to you. And first to Yi, would really welcome hearing from you more about why and how Rakofta became aware of the linkages between gender-based violence and the environment.
Thank you, Jamal. So RECOF, we are a regional community training center and international NGO working in Asia and Pacific for over 35 years. At RECOF, we recognize gender equality and equity are matters of fundamental human rights and social justice. They are therefore at the center of our mission and vision and all the strategic priorities. Cambodia is a country that has experienced significant environmental degradation, including deforestation, land grabbing, and illegal mining. When promoting women participation and leadership in our projects, we realized there is a need to have a safe and dedicated platform for women to exchange their experiences, their challenges, and to work collectively to address gender inequalities. So in 2019, RECOF facilitated to establish women networks in community protective areas and community forestry. Since then, through regular networking meetings, we became more aware of specific gender-based violence issues that women we are working with are experiencing. So one of the common issues experienced by the women is the harassment by their male counterparts in the management committee, by their families and communities in several different ways. So one of the women members of the network shared her story that she was accused of having an affair with another man member in the management committee since they work together. So in some rural area in Cambodia, culturally, women should stay home and should not travel outside the village with men who are not their family members. So when women members in management committee travel to attend project meetings or activities or to do forest patrolling, families and community become suspicious of their participation. So as a result, there are increasing risks of domestic violence, and they also prevent women from engaging in forest governance. And also many women in this women network experience that men, they joke that women are part of the management committee to serve them food. So in other words, their role in the management committee, it's for cooking. So when the committee members go for forest patrolling. So women in this network, they are part of the management committee, but they feel discriminated and they have limitation in their abilities. They can do so much more than cooking, and they are not respected or valued. That's how they are feeling. And through the RISE project, we expect that women play a stronger and more equitable role in forest governance, and women to more safely and effectively manage forest resources and have better agency, skills, and knowledge due to reduction in gender-based violence.
Thank you so much, Yi. It's so important to listen to communities, to hear from them what their priorities, experiences are, and to identify opportunities, as you all have, to be able to respond to those. So I know RISE is very thrilled to be able to support the work that all of your organizations have identified as those opportunities to respond to the needs of the communities you're working with. I'll turn next to you, Kalyan. If you can share with us a bit more about how you anticipate the partnership with GADC, how this will help the Rakofta work on these challenges.
Thank you very much. as EE said, in the GOV, we try to promote social inclusion and gender in the forest governance. We want more women to participate and share the experience, and also encourage, increase their capacity to be part of the leading committee. And we also want men to change their mindset so they can support and accept the role of women in forest management. And under the RISE project, Recover and Get See, Gender for Development for Cambodia, will work collaboratively to address most of the issue that EE just mentioned, and we will work to leverage each organization expertise. And Recover is recognized expert in capacity building and inclusive community-based natural resource management, while GETSI is the national gender organization with a mission to advance gender equality as a fundamental human rights. And this is the first project of Recover that focus on gender-based violence. And through the RISE project, we will promote the linkages between gender-based violence and environment by doing a research to understand the barrier and social norm and driver of gender-based violence. And we will engage men and community through the context-based and community-driven behavior change campaigns, and shift the mindset of the especially male. And both organizations, we will build knowledge and capacity on gender-based violence in the forest and environmental sector. And we hope that after the project, and Recover will also promote the support for a community and government counterpart to look at the barrier and the norm that linked to community participation. And we will support more in the future to address the gender-based violence in this sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing about the work that your organization is doing in Cambodia. We are going to shift now to Mexico. We're going to hear now from Cinia Carranza from Espacio de Encuentro de las Culturas Originarias, who will be supported with translation by Claudia Duran from the World Wildlife Fund Mexico. They're partnering, the World Wildlife Fund Mexico is partnering with the EECO to implement the RISE Grants Challenge project. Cinia is the founder and general coordinator of the Civil Association at EECO, which works mainly in the state of Oaxaca on local development, environment, mitigation, and adaptation to climate change. Claudia is a biologist and program officer with WWF Mexico. Cinia and Claudia, can you share with us some insights about the relationships and the gender-based violence challenges that you see in ecotourism? Can you also share with us more about your partnership working together and how you will support one another under RISE?
Thank you. I am very happy to be here, and thanks all for this opportunity. During more than 50 years of work in indigenous and rural communities, we have seen how women suffer from all kinds of violence. And this violence is increasing as environmental deterioration and climate change increase. There are many types of violence, but people are so used to it that it seems normal to them and do not associate it with inequality and violence. For example, women receive less income than men for the same work, and sometimes the husband takes it away from them. They do not decide how to spend it. The leadership in the project is held by the men, and the women are led to do cooking and cleaning for the project. In the cooperatives, women are rarely included. Permits and certification are most held by men. Women who have activity in the ecotourism sector are singled out and suffer from slander and discrimination. They experience sexual harassment by tourists and service providers. They do not have control of their territory and natural resource. Therefore, it's very important to make violence visible and to make it clear at the community and police level that violence against women is a crime and violates their human rights. The biggest challenge is to make society aware of this situation and take action to change it. In the ecotourism sector, this is something new. In Mexico, a community-based tourism project have never approached it from this perspective. And now it takes an special relevance as women play a fundamental role in the management, care, and defense of the land and the territory, and are great risks of suffering violence or being murdered. As environmental conditions deteriorate, and the effect of climate change affect the livelihood of the population, violence against women increases. Science it not only implant great workload, but also competition for the resource, limited condition to adapt. Additional, frustration of the partners generate alcoholize and more violence against them, abandoned and violence from the community as well as the woman. The great challenger is to get the population to take action to mitigate violence.
Thank you. For WW Mexico, working closely with communities and their well-being is central to our work in conservation. For coastal communities in Mexico, ecotourism is a big part of their livelihoods. And we have seen in this sector the importance to work in gender-based violence. So thanks to RISE, we will be able to partnership with EECO, who are the experts in gender-based violence, and to deepen our connections and to address these problems that are very important for us to. We will be implementing our project in 3 states on South Mexico, in Yucatan, Oaxaca, and Quintana Roo, working directly with young people, with local authorities, implementing plans to mitigate and prevent violence against women, and providing training courses to strengthen the abilities to women and enterprises led by women. This collaboration, we hope, will strengthen both organizations and improve our work and our connections with the communities. Also enhance our potential to advance towards equality and the enjoyment of women of their human rights and their well-being. And we are very happy to this opportunity. And also I want to thank IUCN and Anita for the Mayan offering. It was a beautiful blessing to our work in Yucatan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We will now turn to our 2 awardees from Africa. So first starting with Zambia. I'm thrilled to be joined here by Musonda Kabinga, who's the head of programs for Action Aid in Zambia, and by Samantha Munagandu, who's the project coordinator at Action Aid in Zambia. Let's start with you, Samantha. You could tell us more about the relationship between gender-based violence and the environment within the fishery sector and the challenges that you are seeing.
Thank you so much. I will start by sharing a story by the name of a woman named Mutinta. This is not her real name. So Mutinta has been in the fishing business for over 10 years. And she would not have been in this for this long if she had not been engaging herself in what is called sex for fish. For her to succeed in this business, she has to have sexual relationship with the fishermen who are the ones who harvest the fish so that they can sell to the women, for them to go and sell to the border so that they can have a livelihood. She says, you cannot succeed in the business if you do not have sexual relationship with the fishermen. And this is not the sex that is enjoyable. This is a sex that hurts physically, emotionally, and psychologically. But there is nothing that she can do because this is her only source of livelihood. She and her other colleagues, other women, they just have to do this because if they don't do this, it means they're not going to have any financial resources to support their families. So if they ever turn down the proposals of a fisherman, it means the fisherman cannot reserve the fish for them. And even if Mutinta has the money to buy the fish, if she does not have sexual relationship with the men, her fish is not going to be reserved. So it's not really about the monies, but it's more about the sexual relationship with the men. It's about the power relations in terms of access, benefits, and control of the fisheries resources. And the men, for them to meet the high demands of the fish, they have to mismanage the fisheries resources by using different practices to harvest the fish that are not sustainable environmentally. And there are very few men that can engage in business with the men without involving them in sexual relationships. So Mutinta says this is not an easy story to share with anyone, not even with her husband. It's very difficult because the moment she shares with her husband, that means divorce, and that means a continued cycle of poverty. It's not so easy for them to share such stories. So as Action Aid, we have been working on the ground, mostly in the fisheries sector, and there are a lot of gender-based violence cases such as this that have been coming, but it was not in our scope to handle these issues because it's either everyone is telling you that's not my scope, that's the fisheries, that's the gender department. They were not really handled. And so the RISE project is really a great opportunity for us because we're going to handle the gender-based violence in connection with the environment. Women do not have equal access, they do not have benefits and control over the fisheries resources, even when sometimes these are provided because of the gender relations or the cultural and the traditional norms that are existing in the areas that we are going to be working on. And to add on, we also hope that this RISE Grants Challenge is also going to help a woman have a safe space, a safe platform in the fisheries resources. They can freely access these resources without the fear of being sexually abused by the men. And we also hope that the fisheries resources can be sustainably managed. I hand over to my colleague for now.
Thank you, Samantha. Maybe just to add that some of the strategies that we'll be using is that we'll aim to strengthen community level mechanisms to track, report, and mitigate against gender-based violence. And particularly we'll work with the local structures that are on the ground, the women groups, who have formed what we call the Women Watch Committees. These are committees that are rooted in the communities that provide a platform where women that are victims can go and report, and they support the women to report such cases to relevant authorities. Other community structures include the fast track courts that government is trying to pilot. It's seemingly a new concept, but we are hoping that we can interact and have a linkage with the fast track courts so that we should be able to work together with the Women Watch Committees and take these cases before the fast track courts. Lastly, just to add that we'll be partnering with the Young Women Christian Association, which is a community-rooted organization who have been on the ground working on advancing women's rights, as well as promoting access to socio-economic justice for women. And I think pretty much that's that. But just to add that the other thing also relates to issues of inclusion. In the fishing camps, you find that most structures in the fishing camps are male dominated, and that's an area where we want to focus on to ensure that we promote inclusion and women leadership in the fishing camps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So many lessons to share with others working in the fisheries sector around the region and around the world. Last but not least, we will hear from Joyce Peshu from the Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association, where she's the program officer for gender, leading and implementation of the institution's gender strategy. KWCA has a unique experience to share with us today because they are in fact a winner of a past RISE grant. So today they can talk about the work, Joyce, that KWCA is doing to scale and adapt what they have learned from that work and the opportunities you see now to be able to expand the reach of that. Please, Joyce.
Thank you. So KWCA is a membership organization of conservancies in Kenya with a membership of 184 conservancies, placing communities at the centers of wildlife conservation. A wildlife conservancy in Kenya is land that is either managed by an individual or community for either purposes of wildlife conservation or other compatible land uses, so that to better livelihoods. In terms of the role that women play in conservancies, so that I can speak about how we are planning to scale up our work, women play different roles in conservancies. One, in governance, where they take up leadership role, being part of either making or influencing decisions in conservancies. The other aspect is on management, where women are managers, they are rangers in these conservancies, and in enterprises where women can participate in nature-based enterprises and tourism. Women taking up these roles sometimes experience different forms of gender-based violence, such as psychological gender-based violence, where they can be teased by engaging in male-dominated spaces. And being part of the previous RISE, we've been able to attend some of these meetings where women have come up to get into these spaces, and we've seen this happening with a research that was done some time back, showing that out of 15 out of 24 women reported physical, verbal intimidation by partners due to the engagement in conservancies enterprises. And then there's aspect of sexual gender-based violence from being engaged in these spaces. Then women are more vulnerable, especially due to the harmful social norms and system and lack of safeguard in the systems that are there. And this is some of the approaches that we've been able to do in the previous RISE, mostly focusing on the social norms in terms of using a tool from Care International to be able to explore, for communities to explore and challenge the harmful social norms in those communities and create spaces for both women and men to dialogue, but also spaces for women to be in the forefront. As I talk about that, I'll also share a story, and I'll use Mary as the name of this lady. So Mary was brought up in a community in one of the landscapes in the conservancies, and every day as she grew up, she watched her mother go and fetch water and also do the household chores at home. And as time went by, because of the prolonged drought, the distances grew longer, and the mother had to go and collect firewood inside the collect firewood and fetch water inside the conservancy. While she went with the mother, she noticed the rangers in the conservancy, and most of the rangers were men. But she really wanted to now, because that was kind of the opportunity in that conservancy, she wanted to become a ranger. So as she grew old, she applied to become a ranger and got into the ranger workforce. Being in the ranger workforce, one, she noticed all the leaders in that conservancy were men. The second thing is that the rangers camp were not considering the needs of the female rangers. She was usually teased or sexually harassed by other male rangers. But also in the ranger camp, because she's a woman, she was expected to do gender roles. She was expected to cook and, like not in the same place as the other male ranger. Apart from that, in her role, she experienced sexual violence. She was left in the camp with a male ranger, and the male ranger tried to sexually harass her the first time. She didn't see any space for her to report. There were no safeguards, and so she didn't report, and she was scared. This happened the second time, but she was in a camp where there were other rangers, and they reported this, and the ranger was expelled. So as we try to bring women into this conservation space, you know, we need to think about, is it safe for them? Yes, we are advocating for inclusion. We are advocating for women to be leaders, to be rangers, to be managers, but is it safe for them to be in those spaces, in those natural resource management spaces? So in our work, in terms of, in the first grant, in terms of challenging these norms, then you know, men are able to start thinking about the consequences of doing this to you know, women that are getting into these spaces. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce. And thank you for sharing this work with us, and for the incredible work that we've just heard from the leaders at this table. As I close today's panel, I do want to first celebrate again these awardees. It is so inspiring to hear from conservancy organizations, environment organizations, and forestry and other organizations that are investing in having expertise on your teams on gender equality and social inclusion, who are investing in doing programs and activities that recognize that we need to look at the linkage between gender equality, gender-based violence, and our overall goals of addressing climate change, environment conservation, and so on. So thank you all for your leadership, for that of your organizations and your commitment. I'm so thrilled to share that we will be opening soon another round of funding for the RISE Challenge next month. We are so pleased that through that opportunity, we will be able to reach more organizations like those at the table today, and who are being awarded today. And we very much invite other partners to join us in expanding the reach of the RISE Grants Challenge. You heard earlier that we've had an enormous response, and we've been able to provide funding for only a few of the organizations that have laid out an incredible vision and opportunity to take this work forward. We hope to be able to reach more of them. And it's so important to remember that if we commit resources and policy action to these topics, we know that meaningful change is possible. You've just heard it. We know it's not inevitable that 1 in 3 women worldwide will experience gender-based violence in their lifetimes. We know we can change the status quo in which marginalized groups are especially vulnerable to gender-based violence, echoing the words of our Vice President, Kamala Harris, who said, no one should have to endure abuse just because they are attempting to participate in society. This is a priority for USAID. We've identified it in our climate strategy. We've identified it in our new gender equality and women's empowerment policy. We've set a goal for it as we look to implement the US government's first ever national gender strategy. And just yesterday, USAID Administrator Samantha Power announced a new commitment we have called Generating Resilience and Opportunities for Women, where we will tackle the urgent challenges facing women in food and water systems, including climate change, to unlock opportunities for women. This includes as well addressing gender-based violence and the other safety concerns that they face. So I really hope that together we can direct more resources to fund research and action to address the intersection of gender-based violence and environment and climate. I want to thank everyone who has joined the event today in the audience and online. I want to express a huge thank you to IUCN, especially to Jamie Wee Besson and Ruwani Dharmakirti for their leadership and hard work in pulling together this event, for implementing the RISE Challenge. My thanks to Corinne and Georgia and the USAID team. And as we close this event, let me encourage those of you in the room to join us for the reception, and to note that following the reception at 11:30, the RISE Grants Challenge winners and organizers will walk outside along the Anacostia River Walk here to decompress, to process the conversations we've had here today. Gender-based violence is a sensitive topic, and we'd want to create this space to process what we've experienced. So anyone who'd like to join us is welcome to do so. My thanks again to you all, and please join me one last time in celebrating these awardees.